Magic players have officially taken things too far. There's been a lot of anger and frustrating sentiments made about the announcements for next year, including the sets as well as the competitive schedule. But this post by Jay White, as I mentioned, takes it a little too far. Calling Commander players and Universes Beyond lovers potentially pigs is not the right way to approach criticism. This is just hate. This is a channel that is about criticism. I don't approach that hate side. I want to make sure that the criticism that I apply to Wizards of the Coast, their practices, the lack of competitive support, the over amplification of Commander as a primary format in Magic the Gathering is all approached with a level of reasoning and potentially some solutions as well. And that's what I want to do in this video. I want to try and dismantle some of this hate, because you are allowed to feel frustrated. How you act on that frustration really goes to show your character and actually potentially leads to proper solutions, or just, again, circle jerking of real madness. Let's actually read through the post first before we go too far into not only the repercussions of something like this, but also, again, finding solutions later in this video. Jay White writes, I wrote about what it has felt like to be a competitive Magic player for the past approximately 5 to 6 years. Now, for those of you that are not understanding that timeline, that is approximately when the world changed and things went digital for a little bit. That was close to the start of the advent of the Pioneer format, and it was probably about the time when Commander really became, or started to become, a big focus. We saw an increase in the amount of Commander products per year, the amount of legendaries per set, and slowly we then got the announcement of Universes Beyond. We got the whole Rick Steadfast leader thing, and everything really came together at a head around that time. So let's see what Jay White's thinking here. He has an analogy and says, you have a favorite restaurant that you've dined at for many years now. You love it because they serve high quality food and are staffed by people who care about making the experience of eating at the restaurant good. One day, you notice a new item on the menu: slop. What's this for, you ask the waiter. It's for the pigs. Pigs eat slop. Over time, a second flavor of slop shows up on the menu, then a third. Then you notice that some of the old menu items you used to love now come with the non-optional side of slop. All menu items are designed with the pigs in mind, on the chance that one of them might try their hand at human food. The quality of any preparation of the human food that's left on the menu also starts to degrade. When you ask the restaurant staff about it, they inform you that they no longer have the resources to make the human food make sure that the human food is prepared correctly. They're too busy making slop. You notice that some of the restaurant's patrons that you've become good friends with have stopped showing up as well. You stopped showing up. You were upset with the direction the restaurant is taking and post about it on social media. You get two types of replies. I'm a pig and I eat slop. The restaurant is doing so well and has so many patrons. How can you be upset? Getting more customers into the restaurant has to be a good thing. And again, all this is actually very important. Even though we can start to see how things become a little derogatory, the sentiment underlying is actually important. The second comment is particularly frustrating because it naively assumes that the entire restaurant clientele wants the same thing, but you don't have 5 different flavors of slop, or you don't want that. You want human food that is prepared by people who are passionate about the food and who cares about the experience of dining at the restaurant being a good one. It's something you used to be able to get here, but you can't anymore. You don't care if there are more pigs eating at the restaurant now. You like things just fine when there are or were no pigs, and contrary to the sentiment, things have gotten worse for you as the restaurant has grown, not better. And really what's going on here is my man is calling Commander players pigs, and the cards, content, and formats that they consume and play with slop. And so this is a very heavy sentiment here. It's very extreme, actually, and I don't agree with it at all. This is probably the stupidest shit I've ever seen regarding Magic in the last couple of months. This has to be the stupidest shit that people are engaging with at this level. Yes, people are probably posting about all types of garbage on free Magic and the worst places on the internet about Magic. Yeah, sure. Everyone's talking about fucking screw trans people this, screw the gays this, everything's too woke. We're all already understanding and being aware of the rhetoric that happens around Magic, a very accepting space that I'm happy to proliferate as well. But when it comes to this, actually understanding what's going on and trying to find a solution for it, this is not the way to do it. Calling Commander players and new players that coming to the game pigs And slop, what they're consuming, slop, is not a solution. It's a way to push people out of the game. You, Jay White, are probably one of, like, you are not articulate. You are probably, if you believe this sentiment wholeheartedly, useless to the game because you don't know how to express your frustration, because miscommunication and not being able to translate your information and provide solution to problems is actually very harmful. Your lack of ability to do so is actually a detriment to the game. And this is part of the, honestly, I'm actually gonna, in my subjective opinion, call this a problem with the whole anti-intellectualism part of things. People aren't able to come across with solutions, act on those solutions. And so in that sense, they just want to be inflammatory. They just want to say the things that get them clicks, which is why I'm also calling this person stupid, because I think this is stupid as hell. This is so useless as a message because the underlying basis for the message has merit, but how it comes across and the choices you made for the analogy are so harmful, so useless, and so, lacking in any tact that no solution will come from this. This will actually further ruin your chance of finding any way to fix your restaurant's quality, the human food, because apparently the human food is actually the real stuff, the 1v1 60 card constructed or limited environments that really make magic up. But it doesn't mean the rest of the food is slop. Right? It's not slop whatsoever. There is value in legendaries. There is value in Commander. There is value in a social experience, and we see that time and time again. Magic the Gathering is not the Magic the Gathering without Commander. Commander is nothing without Magic the Gathering. Commander is nothing without 60 card constructed, and vice versa. All of it is intermingling. All of it has to exist. Now, the over amplification of Commander is a different discussion, and how the idea that the restaurant's menu is being, having parts of it removed for the quote unquote pig slop is valid. But the fact that all of your items are being removed is not necessarily, true or happening right now. Yes, things are being eliminated, but there's actual solutions to this. There's actual things that Wizards of the Coast can do. Now, of course, whether or not they do them is something else, but there's actually really easy things to implement that we can actually amplify as a voice. We can repeat these things on social media, in our videos. We can go to content creators that we see at MagicCon Atlanta, the people that are just there to play Commander Nights and have meet and greets. Instead of just trying to get their signatures and play Commander games with them, we can ask them and pressure them to have voices and speak out on some of these and provide solutions. Some of these people are directly connected to Wizards of the Coast, working with them, and actually can push issues. Some of them are just chasing the bag, and I guess good for them, whatever. The world sucks, get your money where you will, but you have to actually be here for the things that you enjoy and kind of be pro-human race in some way, right? Like, you actually have to be here for the betterment in some way. So you should be putting your creators to the fire. You yourself, as someone who is an MTG limited and legacy enthusiast, a casual Go player, developer by profession, someone who has a mind for problem solving, right? Like, as a strategist, a Go player, a very advanced game, a developer, someone who, again, problem solves on a regular basis on the back end, 2 SCG open top 8s, 1-time SCG con win, again, someone who is competitive, who understands the ground up, clearly cannot communicate how to do these things. You don't understand actually how to go about your problems, which really surprising to me as someone who understands some of the structure of this. How do you get this done as a developer by profession? How do you communicate these issues? How do you go about finding change? This isn't necessarily corporate where, all your middle managers and your executives are against you. You just have to kind of work with the flame you're in because you're here for a paycheck. Wizards of the Coast is not without its problems. And you can exploit some of those problems, or find avenues for people to talk about those problems. You don't need to amplify by calling people, again, pigs. We can find different ways. And so here's the kind of tweet where he says that this is specifically, to me, the slop Someone asks, is the slop referring to Commander products and players or just the overall quality of the cards? He says, to me, the slop is a trend of designing the game to appeal with the Commander mindset. Some people want Magic to be a board game to play with friends on a Friday that isn't too complicated. Others want Magic to be a low variance, complicated skill game played with money. Now, low variance is absolutely crazy. Every card game, every board game is going to have so much, like a level of variance, if not so much variance. Me personally, of course, I am not a fan of the high variance games, like board games that involve a lot of dice, but I recognize that there are going to be games in Magic the Gathering that have a lot of variance in the sense that, you know, I'm not going to find my lands, or I'm going to find too many of my lands. And I find that game systems that actually reduce some of this variance lose a lot of depth. I'm thinking of Lorcana that loses the stack system. I'm thinking of Bandai games that don't have the land flooding issue. You actually draw resources from a different deck. Like, there's a lot of depth actually lost, in my opinion, in the pursuit of the casualification and the approachability of those games. Now, those games have a lot of positives to it, but I grew up on Magic, and so this is what I'm used to. I accept the variance. The variance is a kind of facet of the game. It's not a con. And he even responds saying, and to be clear, it's not bad if this is what you like about Magic. Having fun with your friends is part of the human condition. I love that shit too, and I seek it out in other areas. It's not, you know, it's not that one of these ideas is better than the other. It's that they're incompatible. So this doesn't make any sense. So clearly you can communicate. You can go about, you know, you can go about speaking your mind in a clear, concise way. You can explain what you mean, and that you have the ability to see the other side and understand the flaws in your argument. So why the hell are you purposefully calling Commander players pigs and the things that they enjoy slop? This was a choice, right? And it was made out of frustration and anger. You can be frustrated and angry. How you go about that speaks volumes. And this tells me you're an idiot. I'm going to be honest. That's what this tells me. You lack the ability to actually control your emotions and go about your communication in a way that is effective, right? Because there are avenues to affect change, and there's things that you can do. And I'm going to talk about them later down the line, but I'm going to call this out in terms of criticism, just like I do with other people, right? Like if you can call Commander players pigs, because I'm a Commander player, if you can call me a pig, I'm going to call you an idiot. Right? We can go back and forth in this, and we can start to see how an eye for an eye type of stuff doesn't really do anything in terms of solution. People in my comment section right now have probably already commented, oh, calling him a pig doesn't do anything. You're doing exactly what he's doing. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm highlighting. We got there. It went over your head, folks. It flew over. We finally got to the point here where I had to speak out loud how you see how this is not working. You see how no solutions are being found, right? Stick with me here. I'm not really about anti-intellectualism, even though, yes, I do make slop content, but that's what gets clicks. I'm stuck to the freaking algorithm. So when I make a few videos here, I can speak my mind, actually find some change. Maybe y'all will actually kind of pay attention, because I know the people that are with me on this video, they're the great people. They probably left a like, they probably left a comment, and they're trying to find a solution. They're frustrated, but they're here to listen with me. Everyone else that already mad and left, screw them. You know, they're not here for the real solutions. So this is where I kind of explain my opinion. I want to go through how some people are actually just absolutely wilds in the comments for this, because my tweet's blowing up here. You know, someone, I say here in response to a quick back and forth I had with Corbin about, like, you know, he's not really talking about Universes Beyond, but more so about Commander. I assumed it was about Universes Beyond, and he kind of showed me the tweet as to what. And, you know, I say, you know, how do they say that in the respond? They go 360 and say this is okay. Roger says here he's trying to convey how the new design philosophy affects him and players with a similar mindset. But the way he conveys that is actually not helpful. It's not helpful, and it doesn't actually provide any solution. It just, again, goes eye for an eye. Commander players don't care, so I'm gonna call them pigs. I'm gonna push them away even further. I'm gonna have less people enjoy this game. I'm gonna create a toxic environment. Great, that's a great way to, you know, it's like when your kids or your siblings or your parents or whatever, like the people around you are doing like terrible things, right? Like they're, I don't know, doing drugs, or they're abusing alcohol, or they're, you know, whatever, things that you don't like. There was this great TED talk. I hope I can link it down below. And it was about like addiction issues, right? And it was about how, you know, people like, and it was about like addiction issues and like mice and everything, and kind of extrapolating that into a human model. And ultimately how support, acceptance, and help, and showing people that they have a community is actually the way to solve these problems. Right? Like addiction issues and bad behavioral ones. It's not just about, you know, telling them, oh, you're going to be in so much trouble, you can't do this again. You know, that all that shows, especially with kids, we see this over and over again. And especially with many of you that may have skipped out on parts of life, you know, didn't listen to your parents and all that stuff. Like when your parents yelled at you, right? And they made fun of you, or your friends made fun of you and everything, like did that actually prevent you from doing that behavior? Because the stats show that the majority of the time, that's not actually what's happening. You're actually likely to do the action again, just not go to that person for help. Now, the next time you get drunk, you're not going to call your dad to pick you up. You're just going to try and walk home, completely unsafe. You're going to just try and maybe even drive home, which is completely terrible under those circumstances. And you're going to try and make a bad decision because you feel like you don't have the supports for it. And so you have to, as a caregiver, as someone who has the power in the situation, seeing new people come in, not call them pigs, but you have to find a way to curate that environment. Go to these commander events as maybe just a random one-off tip here. Go to some of these commander environments, engage with them, and talk about the different things that you're doing. Talk about them in a positive light. Like, hey, I went to a draft and it was really fun. You should come to pre-release with me. And then maybe they're not playing limited, but then they're playing pre-release. And then, hey, store, local game store, can we hold a modern night at the same day? You know, sometimes I'll play commander, and you show them that they're having a lot of fun, and hey, you should build a modern deck. I have it. If you don't want to play commander today, I have a modern deck you can borrow. You should come play some modern with us. And so there are ways that you can affect change. These are small ways, and I'm going to highlight them later down the line. But there are ways that you can encourage an environment. But, you know, if you believe this to be a bad behavior, you can be welcoming, you can be accepting, you can bring people in. Again, this is what it is. You know, spanking your kids, you know, fighting with your siblings and yelling at your parents, like, these aren't great ways to engage change. And there are extreme examples where sometimes that may be the solution, or not engaging is the solution pretty much to begin with based on the situation. But that's not what's happening here. You know, Magic players, you know, you're playing a hobby that you're choosing to engage with, an expensive hobby, a luxury hobby. And so people are already making a lot of choices to engage with this game. Why not foster that engagement and help kind of redirect if you want them to engage with the other formats? Just saying, right? And then Shiny Caterpie's kind of response here, talking about how, you know, if it's not a good or bad thing, you shouldn't call this stuff like slop and pigs. It's just a preference, not a quality. And the restaurant analogy doesn't purposely talk down and insult people for liking different things. Like, you shouldn't do that, right? He didn't choose that analogy. He chose to call it slop in people's pigs. So he didn't choose to say like a Mexican restaurant transition to Italian. He didn't choose that reference. He chose to purposely call things slop and pigs, which is not coming across in a concise manner, which is, again, not helpful. I'm highlighting in this portion of the video how it is not helpful as Magic players to scream on the internet and not engage with commander players, not engage with Universes Beyond lovers. It is okay to be critical, but how you be critical and how you communicate that information is so important. It's so vital to how you get people to come play 1v1 60 card constructed or limited or whatever format you want, whether it be tiny leaders or whatever it is. How you engage with people is so important. And that's going to be how you get people to actually have good feelings about constructed Magic and actually have Wizards change their mind. And it's one of the many ways you can do so. Next up, we just have some great bad faith arguments. You know, my favorite is when people on the internet are like, no one's talking about Universe Beyond, little bro. Shut the fuck up. And I'm like, using little bro unironically on the internet is crazy. Honestly, it's that small dick energy that we all love. You know, it's that 3mm defeater energy that we all love. And you know what? If you're powering out there with that a 1 centimeter, you know, defeater, whatever it is, if you're powering out there with you, all power to you. You know, like it's all about how you use it, right? Anyone can find love, but yo, it's really that unconfident little dick energy right here that's not working. You know, and you see how, you know, when I use that insult back, it's not helpful either. Like, I'm not actually adding to this conversation. I'm furthering making fun of them, and then they get more triggered, and then they something. You see how like my response to them doesn't actually trigger a good response from them? You see that? Yeah, we're starting to find small little examples to add to our sample size of how that doesn't work, right? And then you got this one, pronouns in bio, get a load of this. Like, really? These are, you know, and these are the opinions of people that have like never been checked in their lives. Like, these are the opinions of people that are like, they've never had anyone say no. They probably like don't have like real loved ones, to be honest, right? Like, because if you did have loved ones, like they would actually say something about like the negative behavior. They're probably like really like frustrating or annoying in real life, and no one really wants to hang out with them because they don't understand that, you know, they're probably the type of person that are like, oh my God, you know, you have to accept me for who I am. I am who I am. And they don't actually personally analyze how like who they are is actually just a terrible person, right? Like, you should be able to be who you are to a certain degree, because once you're past a certain line, like, you're probably just being harmful. I'm just saying, like, we can read you like a book. Okay, when you're terrible people like this, when you're like, why are we using this language in 2025? It's weird behavior. It's honestly like, it's zoo animal behavior. It's really like, if we're gonna be calling people pigs, I can call you pig back. This is zoo animal behavior. This is zoocosis behavior. You're trapped in a zoo for all of us to watch you. You're the clown here. You're the clown here, and we get to watch you for free. This is a free zoo. I get to come and watch you go, ooh, wow, whatever, all over the place using language like this. Just saying. It's not really, I don't know. It's kind of funny for when a 13-year-old says it. It's kind of sad when, like, you know, the older you get, the more you use this. Just saying. Part of the sentiment that's been going on over the weekend is this kind of big comparison, and I made a video about this earlier this week here, talking about, you know, Legos and how it compares to Magic right now. This thread kind of popped off, and I used it as a central point, and how honestly Magic the Gathering isn't really Lego. It's because Lego doesn't have a competitive environment. Apparently there is, but that's not what Lego's for. It's for creativity, and it's for expanding your creativity, building whatever you want, blah blah blah. And so Lego became more successful when it started collaborating with different brands, and Magic undoubtedly has become more successful. We see that through the straight metrics of just money. You know, Final Fantasy made $2 million in one day versus Lord of the Rings making that over 6 months. And we will eventually see sets that don't make those numbers, but will probably surpass those numbers. Maybe the superheroes Marvel set becomes even more popular. Spider-Man was a bit of a flop. Maybe you see Hobbit become even better. Like, there's IPs that will draw that level of attraction. And we probably see that with collaborations with, you know, secret layers that are collaborating with K-pop bands, because they didn't mention they're not beyond collaborating with K-pop bands. And so the IP collaborations will continue. The problem is when the focus is more so on these, even though we have the resources to focus or provide some of those resources into other things. If Commander is making them money, like so much profit, you know, it's making them so much money. Why don't we spend some of those resources in improving other 1v1 60 card environments, or just other applications, you know, Magic Arena, Magic Online, whatever it is, other resources in improving those more and more. And that's the question we kind of have to ask ourselves in how we do that. For example, Pro Tour Edge of Eternities happened this past weekend. It's with a modern format. It was actually really exciting to watch. It was live streamed. There are some gameplay coverage videos missing, which is kind of sucky, but like, we had a stream and we had a very diverse top 8. I would say relatively that it was a successful Pro Tour. I think a lot of people enjoyed watching it. It was a format that has been very beloved for a very long time, regardless of where it's been. I've been up and down on it for a very long time as well. And I'm very happy that, you know, Michael got the win and how he did it. It really showcased some high skill Magic, even against, like, you know, combo deck versus control, like with the dark horse of control coming to second was really exciting. So a lot of things to rave about here. But this is one avenue that people engage with 1v1 60 card Magic through coverage. People talk about why isn't there coverage? We bought back coverage. A lot of people having grassroots effort to make coverage their own and everything. And how do we get people to watch more of this Magic, make it more accessible? And that's what we're going to talk about today. This was live stream, for example. This was a digital way to engage with the game. This was not something that you can necessarily go to unless you had the money to travel to and watch this live, but you might have been watching this live digitally on YouTube or on Twitch. So, you know, there are ways that we can improve them. And this could happen not maybe digitally first, but obviously we could do this specifically from the ground up with, you know, kind of on site and with the structure and with TOs. This was a tweet I referenced before. Evergrade's Empress, shout out to you. You actually talked about, you kind of commented below on the video already where I talked about this, but, you know, ways that originally the tweet was about how her husband wasn't someone, or was someone that really loved Magic, talked about it all the time, but he even played on 2 Pro Tours, but recently hasn't been talking about it a lot. And how are some ways that we can improve this? Well, a judge program that requires, that is regulated by WotC themselves, and that's happening actually. So we actually see some of these improvements already. We know that Wizards of the Coast made up a posting for a manager of the judge program earlier this year, and so that's going to be a really exciting change to see, and a brought back of a more concerted effort to manage the competitive integrity, and potentially pay judges properly for their time. Support for competitive play instead of treating it like an afterthought. That's a very like broad statement, but we're going to talk about that in a bit as well. Designing for competitive play to avoid so many bans. And this is going to be a little tough because we've kind of opened Pandora's box on this. It's extremely hard to design for competitive play when your pool of cards is extremely high. We see this in non-rotating formats, but in a rotating format of standard, having almost double the amount of sets per year from years ago. When we had 4 sets a year, 3 of those were 1 block sets. There are problems with that. A lot of people felt bored in between and all that, and the blocks didn't feel as cohesive, but they were great if they were like 2 block sets, maybe 3 wasn't, because the third one wasn't as popular, as we saw from articles from Mark Rosewater. If we are able to better design those sets, maybe have 5 sets per year or whatever it is, then we would be able to better design environments for each other. But once you have 6, 7, then you just have too many cards interacting with each other. It's really hard to design that. And so I feel like we're kind of way past this, but we still do have resources designing them. It's not just we have infinite combos all over the place. Like, there are things that eventually, like, they do pass through, and we do have to make changes on them, and changes are being made, but even now they're being made very slowly. Like, they want to only ban standard once a year. And so we're having this whole VV mono red problem that won't get addressed until November. So standard is kind of like a moot format until then. Bringing back the old GPPT structure is something as functional and exciting. I think there's like a level to this. I think the RCQ and RC system has ways that you can abuse it. There are frustrating elements to this. And I think part of this is also the fact that there are more and more Magic players every year. We have cons now. We have so many ways to engage with Magic that there are kind of GPs. There's PTs already. We brought back the Pro Tour system, but GPs into PTs are like very frustrating and non-accessible. 2-day whole tournaments are like not that great. Honestly, it's a lot of grindy Magic, but it does kind of help with the fact that, now it's more restrictive. If you have like only 1-day events instead of the 2 days, you are very restricted in the amount of losses that you can take. You have less leeway. And so in the variance of like the early rounds, if you come up against your worst matchup like constantly, then you're just not going to get there. Like, I remember back in like GP Toronto so long ago, I actually like went into the modern event. I was playing Burn at the time. This was way before I picked up Mill, and I came up against Soul Sisters and Adnos. Of course, I came up against my 2 worst matchups in the first 2 rounds, and then I went 0-2 drop. I had to, right? I wasn't gonna win, and so that was like very frustrating. But that's like what it is with the structure. And so I'm not sure. Like, you can bring back the old structure. I just think there's a lot of flaws with it that this system does address. On top of that, they talk about back to blocks. There's no cohesion between too much product, but we always kind of address the fact that you shouldn't be going back to like 3 blocks. Probably 2 is like the ideal way, but it helps create like a continuous story. Eternal formats actually being like non-rotating, which is a Modern Horizons jibe, but again, we're past that. They're not going back on that. Prize structure is something incented to actually try to qualify. This is actually very important. I've talked about this in multiple videos. I'm going to talk about this later as well to re-highlight it, but for those of you that know my Mox Opal kind of theory, we're going to talk about it. Support for LGS is moving FNM back to its competitive roots rather than commander focus. That actually comes from incentive to actually try and play and qualify, and prize structure. So that's kind of both at the same times. And the people always talk about, what if all these things exist in another TCG? Ain't no, like, Fab isn't this big. There's so many regions across the world where Fab isn't like being played to that much. This is like we want to try and fix the things existing now instead of like moving away. Yes, Fab is a thing. Flesh and Blood is a thing. I get it. But people only have the capacity for so many things. Dropping a thing that you've spent so many resources on is a frustrating thing for people. The whole sunk cost fallacy is something that like you can convince no one of. It's a common fallacy, right? Like, it's, people have played so much Magic, it's hard for them to actually like switch over into something else unless you have like resources. So the first thing I'm gonna suggest, and I've suggested this actually in a previous video, is Twitch drops. So we streamed the Edge of Eternities, MTG Edge of Eternities, right? Why not, after, while watching Twitch or some integration through YouTube or something, you connect your Magic Arena or Magic Online account. And if you watch 30 minutes, you get a avatar. If you watch 1 hour, you get, maybe some amount of play points. If you watch 3 hours of that stream, maybe you watch like the majority of the whole event, you then get a number of play points to get into a league. You get, free access to like a code that opens up an account for a weekend that gives you free access for that weekend to play leagues, play whatever deck you want. Again, a way for people to watch competitive Magic, an incentive for it, and then be able to use those rewards in the environments that they're already playing in. For Magic Arena, maybe it gives you some amount of gems, some amount of coins, or free entries into draft. For example, you're watching a limited spotlight that's being streamed live. If you watch the majority of the whole thing, 4 or 5 hours of a certain day maybe, and you can get a draft token to be able to go draft that environment, and then you like it, and then you continue play. You're in there, you use some of those cards for something else. And so These are ways that we can create integrations inside of digital accounts that we already have in a digital environment where we already have coverage for people to then cross-pollinate, watch competitive Magic, play competitive Magic, be more invested to continue to watch more play and watch more competitive Magic. And it's a feedback cycle. This is a thing already happening in other games. Watch other creators play certain games, you get rewards in that game. You play that game more, you go watch other creators play that game. It's a feedback cycle that already happens. It already happens for many other games. I would call it a relatively successful one, and the creators also gain a lot too. It might be, you know, not hard, like not actual invested viewership, but a lot of people leave these Twitch drops on kind of passively, and those creators gain benefits from them because they have more viewers, more people watching their stream. Twitch and YouTube push their streams even more, and then they just get more viewership and more just people engaging with them overall. Creators gain, the people watching them gain personally and through their entertainment in the codes. Just a lot of things are happening, and Twitch drops or something analogous to YouTube is such an easy way to integrate this and have people watch content and engage with it at a game level. Very simple integration that other games are already doing. The Mox Opal analogy. This is about competitive price structure and support. So specifically when it comes to Mox Opal, in a magical Christmas land, in a vacuum of a standard environment, if you designed a standard environment without any without low cost artifacts, for example, take a look at something like Mox, the Mox for dragons, right? So if we take a look at that for dragons right now, if we look at Mox, right, we have Mox Jasper that says add 1 mana of any color, activate only if you control a dragon. This was an example of a Mox that was printed into a standard environment but has no support. But eventually down the line, we may have shapeshifters, changelings enter the picture. And so then Mox Jasper might actually be more valuable, especially with Lorwyn. We might get more shapeshifters, and so dragons would become more relevant. And that's where if you design around a specific Mox being valuable in a format, something like Mox Opal, if you had a lack of cheap artifacts that were also non-interactive with other things, you just had artifacts, then you could print Mox Opal into an artifact heavy set that didn't necessarily have the ability to abuse Mox Opal early. You could then print Mox Opal at Mythic, at Rare, whatever it is, into a standard environment. Ideally Rare, but I get it if you put it in a Mythic. Now Mox Opal is available in standard legal packs. It is widely circulated. People are opening more booster packs because they want to open the chase card of Mox Opal. They then want to be able to do a couple things. The people that open the booster packs could be non-rotating format players or eternal format players, and are able to then open up the Mox Opal to then play for their own decks. They can build into Affinity, they can build into other combo decks, whatever it is. They then even may want to sell Mox Opal to then have more flood the market to be able to then afford their other decks. And now the people that actually want to play with the Mox Opals are now able to purchase Mox Opal at a lower cost. Additionally, the standard players can then be incentivized to play with Mox Opal or play for Mox Opal by having Mox Opal be a prize. Instead of laughing Jasper Flint and stupid prizes like that and promos like that, we could have Mox Opals such as the Urza Saga promo that went about that is now cost so much money. We could actually have standard players play for Mox Opals to where, yeah, they may not use Mox Opal. There might be a Mox Opal deck that's relatively good in the standard environment. But if you don't design around it, then it's not going to be that great. It's just going to drop in price, and you play for that promo. Then what they can do is they can then sell it to the store to then be able to buy more standard product or get into other formats. They might keep the Mox Opal to then play the older formats, and the older format players will actually engage with the standard format to either win the Mox Opal or just then be invested in standard by playing for it. It's a feedback cycle. All of these 60 card constructed players are then more incentivized to play just because we added and designed around Mox Opal in a standard environment. We could print so many cards that exist in Magic the Gathering that aren't on the reserve list into a standard environment and not build around it, and then have actual powerful cards in the standard environment that aren't going to drastically increase the price of the decks themselves because, again, they aren't at powerful, but then have a feedback loop of players engaging with this format to be able to re-engage back into theirs and have cards that are staples be more accessible. Mox Opal is an extreme example of this. It would be a very hard one to design around, and I would really applaud the designers for doing so. But again, it is an example of an expensive card that exists in other formats that you could put into these formats, such as Urza Saga. Urza Saga could be another one. If you did not print good 1 mana or 0 mana targets for Urza Saga arguably is like not that great of a card. You could probably have landfall recursion. It could be maybe a control win condition, but it's a land that goes away. You just create some tokens. You have to play some amount of artifacts. But again, if you don't have good tutor targets, then like the format's not going to be great for it. So again, these are examples of cards that you could print into standard environments with actual like good testing behind them, and not have to power creep them through Modern Horizon sets. This is another way that you can incentivize 1v1 60 card Magic and competitive Magic in general with better prize support. So again, prize support, we have Twitch drops, and then we also have the kind of idea that I was exploring earlier about having cross-pollination between engaging with Commander players and then kind of talking about and being a part of the community to then have them join other events. And that is where that last point really kind of drives home of part of it. It's you, right? The people calling Commander players pigs on the internet are useless. Actually, it's up to you to do better. It's up to you to go to your Pauper night. It's up to you to go to your Legacy night, your Modern night, right? It's up to you to engage other people to come in and play. It's up to you to work with the organizers to have better prize support. It's up to you as well, if you don't have the resources for that and you don't have a local LGS or whatever, to then go to the comment sections and the cons of all of your creators, your favorite creators, and talk to them, pressure them to speak to Wizards of the Coast, to be vocal about these things. And the more you pressure them, the more they'll do it. Because if you don't, you'll disengage with them. This is holding people to the fire, right? We are so good at holding people to the fire of so many other things. So at a small scale, why don't we ask the cosplayers, the Commander streamers, the Tolarian community colleges of the world? Why don't we ask them to speak to and pressure them to go to Wizards of the Coast or speak about this publicly? Maybe not go about to Wizards of the Coast directly, but speak about this actively on the streams and everything, to then have Wizards of the Coast have better price support, pressure them into better price support, have Pioneer be a competitive event at a Spotlight series. Why can't we as commenters, instead of calling Commander players pigs, go to the pieces of the community that are spreading Commander, being more vocal about it, to have them be more critical about this? The other day, Nitpicking Nerds actually put out a just talking piece video, just being casual on a couch talking about their criticisms of the game, which is actually great. And I would hope that video gets amplified more. We should be having creators do this more, because like a lot of them have the capacity to be doing nonsense. If you have the capacity to be doing nonsense on some free time and engaging with Commander and engaging with the money that Wizards of the Coast gives you, you have a couple minutes in your life to just be critical, to think critically and actually engage with the game in a way that your viewers want you to, that they need you to, right? Instead of just collecting the brag freely and not saying anything and just hoping to get free product from Wizards as an MTG ambassador, we can be critical. We can not have people like this just call Commander players pigs and this is my experience, this is how I feel. That is how you feel, but how you vocalize it needs to change. It does not actually lead to any good positivity in the community whatsoever, and we need to do better with our voices. We have avenues that we can use to engage and find change and enact change in this game, and we should be exploiting them more. Your content creators need to be doing better. Your Commander streamers that are on Twitch with like 10 viewers, 50 viewers, 200 viewers, they need to do better. There are so many content creators that I have engaged with on streams. I'm a part of their discords, that they can do better in this avenue, but they know that they might get pushback, but that pushback is fair if it means creating a better change for your community. Commander players and Commander enjoyers and Universes Beyond lovers all deserve to hear this. They don't want to hear the hate, but they should be a part of the criticism. They should be able to hear critical thought, and how you communicate that is up to you. If you are able to communicate that in a super non-hateful way, that is only going to serve to better this community and how we communicate to Wizards and express our change. This is how we enact change. This is how we make steps forward. It's not calling Commander players pigs. So we need to be doing better. So ultimately, Jay White, your sentiment is felt. I understand your frustrations and what you're trying to say. The way you brought about that message is honestly stupid and useless, and you need to do better. As someone, based on your pedigree and what you're enthusiast of and what you do by your profession, I expect better from you. You are someone who is capable of great critical thought. You are someone that is capable of great intellect in terms of how you come across in the game, how you come across in your profession, and just how you communicate this game of Magic the Gathering. You understand a lot of heuristics, you understand a lot of parts of design. So why can't you communicate your message better? Because you can. You're choosing to be hateful, and you're choosing to be disingenuous, and you're choosing to actually not better this game.